Welcome to the broadcast. On this March 11th, 2025, a lot in the news today. President Trump gets a Tesla in front of the White House. Let's see what else. Continuing resolution has passed in the House. There you go. That's just a few of the stories. And tonight, I'm telling you, she knows the Brandon House theme music. She knows the Brandon House theme music. She doesn't bother me until that theme music comes on. Then she comes up to say hello. But tonight, we're going to have with us Sam Antar. He was the CPA that worked with Crazy Eddie in New York. You guys remember the Crazy Eddie commercials in New York in the 80s? Some of you do, some of you don't. His story is remarkable. You ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks? It's kind of like that. But it's real life. That was based on real life as well. But he is using his CPA skills to try to do some looking into some of the elected officials and what they're up to with their money and more and property. Then we're going to be joined by Colonel Rob Maness. We'll talk a little bit more about the ceasefire deal, supposedly with Ukraine. Now we're waiting on Russia to join in. And a massive drone strikes on Russia today by Ukraine, really odd. Then we're going to talk about the Europeans and the European elite and NATO trying to draw America into a war with Russia and why I think that might be the case. I'll explain my idea, see what the Colonel thinks about it. The great setup that they're trying to do, I think, to take down America and Russia. Two leaders they don't like right there. I'll mention a few others and why they don't like them. I'll explain why. And then let's see, who else do we got? Alex Newman. I guess a lot of the Department of Education employees got notices about not showing up to work. Is the Department of Education about to be shut down, or is it going to be shut down and then its duties and money absorbed by other agencies? All right, let's talk about that. Along with children being sex trafficked through foster care. Another report came out, this time apparently by a law firm. A new report. That's very interesting because it fits with what we were talking about a week or two ago with Garland Favorito and our friend, the late Nancy Schaefer. And now a new report, apparently, by a law firm talking about children being sex trafficked through the foster care programs. We have so much to get to tonight. Let's not delay. Remember, we're brought to you by Worldview in part. One of our biggest sponsors, folks, is worldviewfoundation.com. Our foundation allows us to push out a lot of programming for free as ministry, education, public service, if you will. We can put it all behind a paywall, our 24/7 stream, where you have to pay to see it. But we want to do that. We don't want single mothers, older folks on a fixed income, people that have fallen on hard times. We don't want young people maybe that are watching that can't afford to help us out. We don't want any of those people to be blocked from getting truth. So we rely on our foundation to help us push this out as a broadcast service, education, and ministry in many ways, helping people understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. We also, of course, with our foundation, sponsor some things, including our upcoming rally in Milwaukee that'll be absolutely free. Free. Well, now we're going to take an offering for the foundation to help offset the cost. Renting the building is going to be quite expensive. Not to mention we got to fly in the speakers, pay their honorarium, their hotel. Our foundation also sponsors our Sunday night church service that I've been teaching for many years. As right now, I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. I'm in Revelation chapter 13. This coming Sunday night, we'll get to Revelation 13. We'll deal with the mark of the beast. I think we got plenty of technology that could set that up. Yeah, I do think so. All of this is brought to you in part by our foundation. And not only do we put out the 24/7 stream for you to watch, like right now, for everybody to watch, we'll take these individual interviews and put them online for you to watch again for 7 days for free and to share with friends. Worldviewfoundation.com. We do need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com. As I said, I got a note the other day from another lady saying, I've been watching for a couple of years, and now I'm doing my part, making a contribution for the first time. I know there's still a lot of you that can afford to support us. You just haven't yet. Would you please do so? And if you can't support us, don't you worry about it. Just pray for us and promote us. And one way you can promote us, of course, is by going to worldviewstore.com and get our free business cards. Thousands of these going out. Free business cards. Worldviewfoundation.com is how you can support us, how you get the free cards to promote us. If you can't support us financially, you can pray for us and you can promote us. Get the free cards at worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. But again, I do implore you, please think about us right now in giving to us through the foundation. You can also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Worldviewfoundation.com. We got a lot to get to. Let's get to it. Joining me now is Sam Antar. Hey, do you love a personal interest story combined with news? I do. And have you ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks? That was kind of an interesting story built on real life. Well, Sam Antar, as I understand, is kind of in the same vein. I'm waiting for someone to make a movie about Sam. We'll hear about Sam's life, but also how Sam is very good at auditing and getting down to numbers. And has he found any money laundering going on with government officials? Or how about Letitia James? Is there any chance that her financial disclosure issues are expanding and show that maybe she is actually guilty of what she accused Donald Trump of? I'm asking questions. I'm not making statements because I don't know the answer to those. But I think our next guest may have some indications on these questions. We'll get to that. He joins us now, Sam Antar. Sir, welcome to Brandon House Live. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me on, sir.
Let's get to your personal story because it is very intriguing. Now, you were the, what we say, the CPA, the accountant for a business in New York in the 80s called Crazy Eddie. Is that right?
Crazy Eddie's was a family business owned by my cousin and my uncle, and it eventually employed pretty much the entire Antar family. At its peak, it had 3,000 employees.
Wow.
And I started off as a stock boy when I was 14 years old. And Eddie and his dad took me under their wing. And they put me through college to get a CPA license.
Yeah.
So I would know, weaknesses in auditing and accounting and help them to commit more sophisticated crimes in the future. I was trained to be a criminal basically from my teenage years. Eventually, I passed the CPA exam with one of the top 1% marks in the country. I had 91 average on the CPA exam. I got my CPA. I went to work for the small accounting firm that was auditing Crazy Eddie's books. And even learned more on the job experience on how to fool auditors and commit securities fraud. Eventually, Crazy Eddie's went public, and they got a bigger accounting firm called known as KPMG, Main Erdman today. It's a Big Four firm, and I fleeced them very successfully too. As a criminal, I never lost an audit. In other words, nobody ever uncovered Crazy Eddie's frauds. It was actually uncovered by accident when somebody, believing my BS financial statements, thought that Crazy Eddie was the goose that laid the golden egg and took over the company in a hostile takeover. So I'm a victim of my own criminal success.
Wow. Now, I went and found an ad. Okay, this is from 1978. Okay, I guess these were running all over New York, these commercials. Here we go, Logan. Let's run this 1978 commercial. Here we go.
Get a color TV or a Sony Betamax or a TV video game. Get it now, because Crazy Eddie can't be beat. With prices so low, he's practically giving it all away. Shop around, get the best prices you can find, then go to Crazy Eddie, and Crazy Eddie will beat him. Remember, Crazy Eddie guarantees you the largest selection, professionally staffed service centers, and the guaranteed lowest prices. Crazy Eddie, his prices are insane.
Okay, now,
the reason why we're giving out lower prices, by the way, is because back in those days, people seldom used credit cards. It wasn't like today, you swipe it and, the transaction takes a second. Back in those days, you have to call it in or go through those thick books with very tiny numbers to see if the credit card was valid. So most customers paid in cash, and New York is a high sales tax state. So all you have to do is sell the sales tax, and you can give discounts.
And how was he getting his merchandise so inexpensively to offer those savings?
Well, he had volume discounts. Sometimes he didn't get it so cheap because sometimes manufacturers would stop selling it to him because he was so-called killing the brand by over-discounting. But the sales tax, which in New York today is 8.875%, back then I think it was 6 or 7, I don't remember that far ago, the age of the dinosaurs. But back then it was 6 or 7%, and that's a high enough amount if you're skimming. Right off the top, you have 7% leeway in order to discount the customer.
Okay, so
without it costing you money.
Okay, so explain to us non-CPAs how was this I mean, obviously he was moving a lot of inventory. So where was the fraud? Where is the illegal action?
Okay, initially from 1969 to 1979, we were garden variety tax evaders. In other words, skimming cash, underreporting income taxes, and skimming the sales tax. 1979, we had a plan because by then I'm learning accounting. I'm in college to go public, and the plan. And I explained to Eddie, you get a bigger bang for the buck overstating your income and overpaying your taxes as a public company than understating your income and evading taxes as a private company. For example, if I understate my income by $1 million and there's a 40% tax rate, I'm evading $400,000 in taxes. But if I overstate my income by the same $1 million and I overpay $400,000 in taxes, I still have $600,000 in pre-tax income. But as a public company, your stock is traded at a multiple of earnings. So if my stock is trading at 30 times earnings, by overpaying $400,000 on taxes, I'm creating $18 million in fictional wealth.
Oh, wow.
Which we could sell stock on.
Wow. Do you think that goes on today?
Well, they made a movie called The Accountant with Ben Affleck. The whole movie was based upon my fraud. It was known as the Panama Pump fraud, which we don't need to get into the weeds on. But that was the base thing. Yes, in a way, it is being done today. And I haven't done much research on it, but I'll explain how it could be done. In New York, you have campaign financing laws that match 8-to-1 somebody's contribution to a political candidate. That's almost a license to steal, because all you got to do is get one person for, say, $100, and you're getting $800 from the state. That means you have, it's kind of like you have all of this extra money that you can use. And I've seen, smaller examples where they spent money on junkets, and meeting contributors in the Beverly Hills Wilshire Hotel, things like that. So there is a lot of abuse there. Unfortunately, I'm an army of one, and I can't get it all.
Do you trust the stock market today? Between the Fed protection team,
I don't invest in stocks. I don't invest in stocks. Most people are better off buying an index fund because the time that they're going to take and the risk that they're going to put upon themselves, it's not worth it. Just invest in an index fund. Because I know I used to work for short sellers. I used to work for hedge funds. A lot of smart guys, and even then they get it wrong.
Do you believe, though, that a lot of these corporations are making the money they say they are? Do you think their books are legit, or is a lot of this cooked up to boost up the stock?
It was a study done about 20 or 30 years ago. I'm not sure how long. Actually, about 20 years ago, when I asked CFOs that question, if they've ever been pressured to help they asked CFOs if they've ever been pressured to help their CEO meet earnings targets, and I think 70% answered in the affirmative.
Now, of
course, not every company's on the scale of Crazy Eddies, but people do, nudge a little bit here and there.
Right. So, crazy. What happened to Crazy Eddie?
Well, eventually we went public. We were skimming from 1969 to 79 as a private company. And then from 79 to 80, we gradually reduced the skimming to create fictitious growth because our reported income went up as our skimming went down. Then we went public in 1984. By then, most people were paying on credit cards. We weren't skimming anymore, so we couldn't give the kind of discounts that we were giving to customers. And eventually it caught up to us, so we had to cook the books to inflate earnings. So as a private company, we deflated earnings, we understated earnings, but as a public company, we inflated earnings.
And so finally, did a few people go to jail?
Yeah, a few people went to jail. What happened was eventually the fraud became unsustainable. The company stock collapsed. Vultures went in there thinking that Crazy Eddies was still the goose that laid the golden egg, right? We couldn't tell these people, well, don't buy the company, we're committing fraud. But they took over the company and they got what they paid for.
Wow.
They didn't do the due diligence they should have done. The moral of the story is this. is that audited financial statements are no guarantee against fraud. In fact, the word audit is really a false term. The real word that they should be using is a limited review of financial statements that at best catches unintentional errors like typos and grammatical errors, so to speak, on the equivalence.
What do you do today? I mean, with your wealth of knowledge and understanding, what do you do today? I would surely think you'd be an eager person to be hired as a consultant.
Oh, yes, because what happened is that I never hated my enemies. I fought fair and unfair against the feds, but I never hated them. I was always, amicable and, friendly, etc. I wasn't a despisable character, so to speak. My crimes were despisable, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't despisable to the people that were coming after me. And eventually they saw that I had one thing that was the most important thing. Even though my CPA license was taken away because I pled guilty to 3 felonies, I still had that reservoir of knowledge, the formal education to become a CPA, and also the experience of cooking the books. And that made me a valuable commodity. And I started teaching government agencies. Eventually, I was hired by some of the law firms that even sued me back in the day for securities fraud. I was hired to do forensic accounting work. And I did some whistleblower claims with the SEC separately. And I was able to sustain myself. I never had to look for work. People came to me because I had a marketable skill. So the moral of the story is, despite what you've done in the past, if you have an education, that is the most important thing that you can have, because you can always draw on your education.
Did you have your sentence reduced or eliminated, or how'd that work?
Well, because I cooperated with the feds, I got 6 months of house arrest, 1,200 hours of community service, $30,000 in fines, and the civil plaintiffs in all of the lawsuits, in other words, the people that were defrauded, unanimously gave me a complete walk on all civil liability. So I was able to start fresh without having billion-dollar judgments against me.
Wow. And of course, this happened several years ago. So you've been doing, the work you're talking about now for a few decades. So obviously you've been able to make a good living and go on and have a good life.
Yes, pretty much now I'm in quasi-retirement. Only when people like you contact me do I come out of my hole.
Okay. Well, we're glad you did. Now, with that in the background, which is a fascinating story. By the way, other than the Ben Affleck movie, has anyone approached you of writing a screenplay about your life?
Well, there actually is a book. Hold on a second.
Mm-hmm. If you guys want to follow him on X, here's his handle on X, by the way, if you guys want to follow him.
Antar on Twitter X.
That's his handle right there.
There's a book called Retail Gangster by Gary Weiss. He wrote extensively on the Crazy Eddie fraud. It's about 280 pages, very readable. He could have made it 600 pages, but nobody's going to read, an encyclopedia. But it's footnoted with 30 pages of footnotes or endnotes.
So the screenplay had already been written.
He really went to the source documents and interviewed people to get to the information. He didn't rely on my word unless it was backed up by something else.
Right. So now all you got to do is wait for someone to turn it into a Netflix movie.
Let's put it this way. If I were to deal with the crooks at Crazy Eddie versus the crooks in Hollywood, I'd prefer the crooks at Crazy Eddie.
Well, let's transition.
I've been approached by so many people about movies, documentaries, and I found that 99% are full of S.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let's go to this latest tweet by yours. Let's see, when did you put this one out? Looks like March 9th. Here we go. Updated investigation. Letitia James financial disclosure issue expand. I've uploaded my March 6th investigation, or updated it, into New York Attorney General Letitia James financial disclosures with significant new details that further document a decade-long pattern of questionable reporting. Tell me what you're
I'm a forensic accountant, and I don't have subpoena power. I'm on the outside looking in. So what I do is I look for, she says something here, how come it doesn't match what she said there? It's called inconsistencies. And when you see a pattern of inconsistencies, that's a major red flag that indicates that it's very possible that something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so are you accusing Letitia James of actually doing what she accused Donald Trump of doing?
I didn't follow the Donald Trump case, but I will accuse Letitia James of doing what I said she's doing, because I thoroughly documented everything that I wrote about her in links to the original source documents, equivalent to footnotes. Nothing I did was left up to chance. When she said her property was worth $100,000 to $500,000, a Norfolk, Virginia property, that's her representation. When she said that she has $509,000 of mortgages on that property, that's her representation plus property records. So in other words, I left nothing to guesswork. So how do you obtain $500,000 on a mortgage? Mortgages on property that's worth $1 to $150, according to her own disclosures.
Let me go to a graphic. This is what you have tweeted. There it is. So undisclosed mortgages, that's the issue type. Brooklyn property, Virginia property. So you've laid it all out here. Now, have you turned this over to anybody? Has anyone picked it up? Let's say Pam Bondi or anybody in any of these new agencies, or agencies run by new people, I should say?
I've worked for every three-lettered government agency that there is. Some that if I had to tell you who I worked for, you wouldn't be alive right now. I'm only kidding. Let's put it this way. The FBI has my mugshot and fingerprints on file. They know where to find me.
So do you anticipate this is going to get traction within law enforcement?
Yes, because I'm still working on a lot of other leads. This is not finished yet. I'm doing what you call a forensic audit in real time. I'm posting it on Twitter, and I'm posting the larger results, the expanded results in my blog that people can read and people can see.
Is that White Collar Crime? Is that your blog?
Whitecollarfraud.com is my blog. Whitecollarfraud.com.
Have you received a cease and desist letter from Letitia James' attorney?
No, but if they do, they can shove it. Next.
Well, you know why I asked that, right? Because generally, if someone is not guilty, they're going to send one of those out. But I guess if there's not much they can say about it.
Guilty people send them out too. They try to scare people. But you have to understand, I had the federal government up my rear end for 10 years of my life. Okay?
You don't scare easily. You don't scare easily.
That's my vaccination against people trying to bully me. I've been bullied by the best. And when the federal government came after me, they were coming after me because I was wrong. What I did was evil. Mm-hmm. So in this case, I'm not doing anything wrong. So I don't give a SH.
Do you think you could take this and start researching a lot of the top Democrats, maybe even some rhinos?
I've done work on my blog. I've done work on other Democrats in New York. Now, why am I only targeting Democrats? Well, New York is a one-party state. So fortunately for the Republicans, they don't have power in New York. Otherwise, I'd be targeting them too.
Okay, so because I interviewed Rudy Giuliani several times, and one of the first times I interviewed him, I asked him about Ukraine, and he was telling me this is money laundering, and I said, well, why don't the Republicans scream and holler? He said because a lot of them are on the take too. So there's plenty to go around.
There's plenty to go around, and not only that, but from my experience, I've found, it doesn't matter the government agency that's investigating, it's who within the agency that's investigating. The lead agent on the Crazy Eddie fraud, his name was Paul Hayes. He'd been a veteran. He'd done these cases like second nature, third nature. That's how experienced he was. Unfortunately, the FBI mandatorily retired him. I think it was 57, 50, whatever it was. And he had to leave. And with him went a whole wealth of experience that was replaced by young recruits out of Quantico. And, it's not like he retires and everything stays in their computers. FBI agents have a wealth of sources, a wealth of assets, a wealth of informal assets that they rely upon to get things done. And that goes with them. The old days, FBI agents used to need to be ready to do hand-to-hand combat. Today, they don't need to do hand-to-hand combat. There's no reason that any agent should be mandatorily retired.
Let me ask you about Doge then. When you watch what Elon is doing with computers and Doge, and I'm sitting just a few miles from the Electrolux building he bought, where he's built Grok and all these supercomputers that he's running. As he builds these computers that can do things that would take a team of people maybe decades or years or a couple hundred years to do. How do you think this Doge program of his is working when it comes to maybe taking your experience, what you look for, and now having the computer do it. Did you see any
That is
comparison?
great. Now, computers are never going to be perfect. They're like people. Even artificial intelligence, they're not going to be perfect. But what he is doing is great. The problem is that he's a little quirky. You know, sometimes he does things that upset people. I get that, whatever. But you know something? We all do silly things. That doesn't mean he's wrong. Today, some congressman said, well, he overstated the amount of money that he saved. He didn't really save $4 billion. So I wrote back that congressman on Twitter, said, okay, let's say he overstated by a factor of 10. I'll take the $400 million that he saved.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, in other words, they're trying to make it about Musk, but rather than what he's trying to accomplish. Back in 2014, I told CNN we were in the golden era of white-collar crime. Today, I should have expanded it to say we are in the golden era of political corruption. Finally, the tide seemed to be turning because for many years, the government under successive administrations was going down as far as prosecuting white-collar criminals. I hope to see that these numbers are going to start going up again. I mean, there's less white-collar crimes being prosecuted today in 2025 than when I was a criminal in 1986.
But you think it would be easier with computers to catch people than to do this, right?
Yes, the computers will catch irregularities, the kind of questions that I'm catching, or the kind of questions, but you still need the human element to go further. You still need subpoena power, in other words, to uncover more. But me, I don't have subpoena power. But Musk, let's put it this way: if he doesn't have subpoena power, he has the ability to get it.
Wow. Now, I think the taxes we're paying as a nation are like $5 trillion. Do you think that with the fraud, where the government is wasting and there's fraud and kickbacks to NGOs and federal judge making rulings on things?
There has to be, and I'll explain why. First of all, there's an organization called the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, which is an association of about 70 or 80,000, last count, people that are certified fraud examiners. In other words, they have CPAs or they have backgrounds in other subjects, but they also, get formal training as a forensic accountant. Me, I didn't need formal training because I was already a crook on the CPA. So whatever. But I've done a lot of work for them. They estimate that 6% of the United States economy, fraud equates to 6% of the United States economy, which would be over $1 trillion today.
So do you believe that about the $5 trillion we're paying in taxes, if they get in there and keep finding more and more of these judges taking money through their NGOs and elected officials taking money, do you think we would find the equivalent of $5 trillion in fraud? Meaning we don't really need a federal income tax because we've proven that the $5 trillion we pay is just being redispersed to a group of select individuals.
Let's put it this way. I always learn, always and never are always wrong and never right. Okay? Whether we can totally eliminate the income tax, I don't know. But I will say this, that we could probably find a significant amount of money. But what is significant? Some people will say, oh, it's only $1 billion out of $5 trillion. To me, that's significant. If it's 100 billion, it's significant. If it's, the IRS loses $500 billion a year just from income tax evasion. Mm-hmm. That's nothing to do with everything else. And how about all the money we're sending overseas that doesn't benefit America? It's kind of like, here's what I don't get. And I'm not political as far as, I'm not MAGA, I'm not left, I'm in the center. It would be a win-win to save money because we could have both lower taxes and a better social safety net. I think we can have both. Now, to the extent that we can eliminate income taxes, I don't know. To the extent that we can guarantee a minimum income to everybody, I don't know. But we can get closer to what both sides of the political spectrum are fighting for if we eliminate waste. So there's no reason for anybody to oppose what Elon Musk is doing. You don't have to like him. You don't have to like me. All he has to do, All we have to do is to be right. Yes, maybe he over embellishes. Yes, along the way, he's going to make mistakes because nobody bets 1,000. You know bet 1,000? I know bet 1,000. But what he is trying to do in general is the right thing. And thank God somebody is doing something about it. And he's got an administration that enables him to do it.
Let me play
Because even without Elon Musk, this still needs to be done.
Absolutely. Let me play a quick clip before I let you go. This is just today on the Oversight Committee. Congressman Tim Burchett from the 2nd District of Tennessee here. Listen to what he says about the fraud they're finding. Here we go.
Subcommittee more again on efficiency in government and why the fraud is occurring. Had one member say that there's virtually no fraud. Then they came back and said, well, it comes out to 7 or 8%, almost 8% of money going out to these agencies is fraudulent. So it's a huge, to me, it's.
Okay, so 8%. I mean, if you just had 8% fraud, and I think it's got to be much higher than that.
It could be much higher. Let's say it's 2%, for argument's sake. Does it matter? It's still money. The federal government spends, like you said, $5 trillion a year, right? Give or take. What's 2% of $5 trillion? $100 billion? That's a lot of money. I don't want to see that money go to waste.
No.
And there's two parts of it. There's waste and there's fraud. And I'm sure whatever they find in fraud, there's 10 times more waste. Now, I can't scientifically say 10 times more waste, but it's just regular common sense.
All right, so let me ask you in closing. I know I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion. I'm not asking you to give financial advice. But being all that you know, if you were starting out today, what is some advice you'd give to today's young people, and how would you set out to make money today? What would you do?
Save money. Don't spend so much money on drinks. I see these young kids, $15 a glass of wine. You're crazy. Save money, invest it in an index fund or no load index fund, and build your future.
Compounding interest, is that what I'm hearing? Compounding interest?
What?
Compounding interest?
No. Yeah, compound low. The S&P will get you, I think, 2% a year. And I don't know what the exact amount is in dividends because I don't invest in anything. The S&P will get you 2%, 2 or 3, and over time it appreciates 10, 20% a year over time, whatever it does. Again, I don't follow it, so my numbers are not exact. Mm-hmm. Me, I'm an old-fashioned crook. I keep it under the pillow.
How do you feel about gold and silver?
I don't know. As I said, I'm an old-fashioned crook. I keep it under the pillow.
Let me promote your website again. Here it is, folks. It is whitecollarfraud.com. Whitecollarfraud.com. What an interesting individual and story. And I'm so interested to keep finding out what you find out when it comes to Letitia James and anyone else. And you are always welcome back.
You can invite me on the air again.
Well, I was going to say, you're always welcome back to tell us anything.
The usual fee is 10 cents. I'll give you a discount to 5 cents, being that I'm crazy Eddie's.
Well, we would certainly take you to dinner if you ever come to the Memphis, Tennessee area. Get you some good barbecue.
I've been to Memphis, beautiful town.
Yeah, well, it needs a little cleaning up. The crime's a little.
Yeah, I know there's a crime issue over there too, but
there's a crime issue over here, but it's getting better. As long as you stay in the suburbs, you're pretty good. But we'd love to have you back. So I appreciate your being with us today. You come highly recommended, by the way, and you did not disappoint, Mr.
Thank you.
Antar.
And God bless and be safe. And just remember, save money when you're young. It gets harder when you get older.
Great advice. Check his handle out here, folks. Here it is, Sam Antar, at Sam Antar on X. You can follow him and find out what he's doing. And great advice he just gave, guys. Save money. I often tell my kids, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you spend. Or in his case, what he's telling you is how much money you don't save. So it's not how much money you make sometimes. I see a lot of people make a lot of money. And I know people that live in my neighborhood who've confided in my wife. One friend of mine's wife confided in my wife. If my husband lost his job, we would lose our house in 6 months. That's a problem. Again, it's not how much you make, it's how much do you save, all right? Very good advice from Sam tonight. All right, if you appreciate what we're doing, folks, we've got to pay the bills here too. You know that, right? Go over to worldviewtube.com sponsors and take a look at all these great sponsors. Every one of these products we use ourselves. The satellite phone, the solar generator, the bivy. I have all of these, okay? We only promote products we believe in and that we ourselves use. Of course, you know about Bella Grace, the elixir I take every day. Melissa loves the Bella Trim. Guess who else got on the Bella Trim today? Can I tell them? Logan House got on Bella Trim today. How much weight are you trying to lose, Logan? You don't know? He says, we'll see. Logan got on the Bella Trim today. And this is also great for your health. Remember what we learned yesterday? We learned yesterday from Dr. Lucky that this is great for regulating your blood glucose levels, optimizing insulin, lowers your blood cholesterol, raising the good cholesterol, helps normalize your blood pressure, good for your overall cardiac health. And you get to prebiotics, lowers inflammation, it's backed by science. These are some of the notes Melissa House made for me because she studied this thing. She has studied this and she's loving it and how it takes away the munchies. And it supposedly takes on that stubborn belly fat, what they say. So there you go. I do have to tell you, she was sitting in my office today. And I was working behind my desk and working. I looked up and she was sitting over there in a chair in front of me. And I looked at her and I thought, wow, she's beautiful, isn't she? And then I said, well, your arms. She was wearing a kind of a summer shirt. You could see her entire arms and biceps. I said, hey, hon, your arms look thinner. She's like, yeah. So she's definitely, toning up. And what she's added is, she said, wait till I start lifting some weights. I'm like, wow, you're not even doing that? I'm like, no, I'm just taking the Bella Trim. Well, there you go. There you go. How much did Dr. Lucky lose, Logan? 35 pounds. Wow. There you go. Check it out. It's all natural. Then we got the sleep, restorative sleep. Melissa loves the restorative sleep. Okay. She loves the restorative sleep gummies because her problem has been waking up in the middle of the night and then not being able to get back to sleep. So she loves all the Bella Grace products. You can check them out there. Of course, the elixir. I love the elixir myself. Okay. This is great for my hair growth, my hands don't crack and bleed, and that was related to gut health. And the collagen, your stomach lining's made with collagen. I didn't know that, right? There's a lot of us that's made of collagen. Collagen makes a big chunk of our bodies. So you got the collagen, which is good for health gut, your gut health, and then when you don't have a leaky gut, then you can get rid of things like psoriasis and other things. You get the hair growth going. I don't have the acid reflux I suffered with for years. So many wonderful things. And that's just the collagen. Then we can add in the cat's claw, which is the anti-inflammation. Some people say, you lost weight. Okay, you've lost weight. The inflammation in your face has gone down. So then there's the cat's claw, collagen, and the astaxanthin. That is anti-inflammatory to take on the free radicals, right? So check it all out, will ya? And then, of course, we have the Swish for Life. I've already swished today. That should be their slogan. Have you swished today? I have. I swished today for about 3 minutes, and then I swallowed it. You can spit it out if you want. And I got glutathione in my system within 90 seconds to help detox my cells. Turn it around there. Help to detox my cells. It also supposedly removes mercury from your brain to help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's. So if you don't want to end up like Joe Biden, you might want to try it. Because the last thing you want to do is end up like Joe Biden. So I switch with this every day. I take my Numi every day, and I take my Gatatana, which is, of course, go to swishforlife.com. There's 162,000 studies on glutathione, by the way, on PubMed. And then we go to the Gatatana. The Gatatana, this is a phytoplankton. It's great for you. I have it every day. I put a half a scoop on Dolly's food every day. And this is loaded with antioxidants, take on those free radicals. So many of your pets are dying too early. Here's this poor cat with a tumor in its eye, got on Gatatana, and the tumor's gone. Remember the guy that started this? Remember him? He was given a few months to live, so he started eating the phytoplankton that he was raising for shellfish and other things. His daughter's like, you're nuts. What are you doing? What do I got to lose? You know, so it's eating it by the handful. Remember he did an interview. We played it. The guy went on to live like another 10 years, retired to Hawaii. Well, David Hunter who developed this Global Plankton Alliance, he learned all that from him. So check it all out, melissahousegpa.com. I'm not making claims. I'm just telling somebody's story. melissahousegpa.com. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the dolly cam. There she is. There she is. You hear something going on down there, don't you? Yeah, another part of the studio. Yeah, you were sound asleep until someone made too much noise. Disturbed your beauty sleep, didn't they? How dare they? You like your gatatana? How about your pumpkin? Oh, you know that word. You like banana and pumpkin? You love banana. You have some banana with peanut butter every morning for breakfast with Dad, don't you? I have my coffee with a banana and peanut butter. You get a little bit, don't you? And then you have your pumpkin. Mm-hmm. Spoiled thing, isn't she? My wife said last night, she said, I woke up, I rolled over, I looked at you, and that dog had her head on your pillow, right up as close to you as she could get. I said, I know. She snuggles in every night. She just demands to snuggle all night long. Most of my other dogs will go to the foot of the bed eventually. This one here wants to stay right up in your space. A few nights I've gotten hot. I try to push her to the foot of the bed. She comes right back up. Anyway, she is spoiled, but they're fun to spoil. All right, so check out all of our great sponsors there. WorldViewTube.com/. Now, if I can spoil a dog like this, can you imagine how I could spoil a grandchild? I just got to get my grandchild to come live in the area. She lives too far away. I would spoil her rotten, so maybe it's a good thing she doesn't live close. I'll just keep spoiling Dolly. WorldViewTube.com/sponsors. WorldViewTube.com/sponsors. And in addition to by the way, the great food I've got her on. We've got her on a vegan food now. We've transferred her off of the puppy food slowly to the vegan food. Now, not that I would ever be a vegan, but I got her on some vegan food that is supposed to just be amazing for dogs. I've got her on the vegan food. I've got her on the gatatana, and then I give her the water. The water. And she loves that water, the same water I drink, by the way. So there you go. All right, check it all out, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Joining me now is Colonel Rob Maness. Big breaking news today, of course, was a ceasefire deal they're working on with Ukraine. Here's President Trump today out front of the White House getting his new Tesla with Elon and little X. Let's see what President Trump had to say.
But very importantly, and I said it, Ukraine, ceasefire, Ukraine. Ceasefire, just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. We can get this horrible war where 2,000-3,000 soldiers a week, every week, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 sometimes. I get the reports, and they're not American soldiers. They're Ukrainian and they're Russian. But people are being killed outside of that. People are being killed in the cities as things explode throughout the cities. And we want to get that war over with. So I think it's a very big, I think it's a big difference between the last visit you saw at the Oval Office and this. So that's a total ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. But I think the ceasefire is very important. If we can get Russia to do it, that'll be great. If we can't, we just keep going on, and people are going to get killed. Lots of people.
All right, there you go. I think the little boy there was giving the media the hush sign again. This time he's telling the media to be quiet. Okay,
but I think the ceasefire is very important. If we can get Russia to do it,
just watch the little boy. Here we go. Give him a thumbs up
we
to
just
somebody.
Keep going on, and people are going to get killed. Lots of people.
Now he's telling someone else, be quiet. The president is speaking. That character, he's funny to watch, little X. All right, joining me now is Colonel Rob. Hey, Colonel.
Hey, Brandon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? What do you make of this announcement by the president today?
Obviously, it's good news. I'm glad and I'm not surprised that he pointed out that's totally different than that last visit, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But this comes on a day when...
It's very good news.
It is very good news, but it comes on a day when Ukraine, I guess, hit Russia with more drone attacks than ever, right?
Yeah, reporting shows that it was massive air attacks, including in Moscow, hitting businesses, residences.
Right.
Not sure of the number of civilian casualties, but also reported that Russia responded pretty massively, and I expect there'll be some civilian casualties in that. I'm glad the president pointed that out.
Hold right there, Colonel.
We're talking about Russia.
Hold right there. We're going to fix your camera. You're very blurry today. Unless it's me. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's the pollen in my eyes. It's spring here, and the trees are budding. Sorry to make the people in Minnesota and Wisconsin jealous, but it is sunny. It is gorgeous. The trees are budding, and allergies. I got an allergy headache today. So maybe it's my eyes that are blurry from allergies, but I don't think so. So we'll fix it. In the meantime, I will point you to worldviewreport.com. Worldviewreport.com. That's where we have Kiev launches 337 drones at Russia in war's largest unmanned aerial vehicle attack drones, according to Moscow. So that's not good, right? That's not good. So we'll see where this goes. I don't know. I think Russia turned around and dropped a pretty good size weapon today, but we do want to see this stop. But the European leaders, they seem to continue to want to push us into war. And today on my commentary for the Worldview Report tonight, I said, I think these European leaders have, many of them, the globalists, they want to take down Putin. They want to take down America. They want to take down any country that is led by strong nationalists that want their own currency, their own culture, their own borders, their own language, that don't want to go along with the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, the globalism. Isn't that interesting? They're going after Donald Trump, the leader of America. They're going after Putin. They're going after Viktor Orban there in Hungary. I guess we had another nationalist in Romania running for office, and he was about to win, and they stopped the election, right? And then at one point, they arrested him for a few hours. Remember that? So don't be surprised if Europeans are trying to get us involved in wars, America, to get rid of America as this city was supposed to be a city on a hill, a shining city on a hill, promoting free speech, freedom of religion, right? Individual liberty, private property, all the things the Europeans are against, as Vice President J.D. Vance so aptly lectured them, right? So maybe the Europeans want us into a war because they think, well, we can take care of both of the groups we don't like. We don't like Russia's President Putin. We don't like President Trump. And if we can get these two countries dragged into a war fighting each other, then the globalists can stand back and watch both these countries go down, right? Is that possible? Is there a little Hegelian dialectic going on here? Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, get them to clash, stir up confusion, some truth mixed with a lot of lies, and then somehow drag in through this conflict two sides to fight each other. And then the globalists can sit back and say, yeah, we got rid of two characters that we didn't want. We got regime change, and we were able to forever transform America. And maybe Russia at the same time. I don't know. Let's see what Colonel Rob Maness thinks about that. I think we got his camera fixed. Colonel?
Absolutely, Brandon. What you just laid out is entirely plausible. As a matter of fact, it's probable that these actors are trying to manipulate this conflict in order to draw us into it so that they can rid the world of an America led by someone that believes in its values, and that not only believes in it, has the intellect and the guts to implement those values again against all odds. I mean, think about this. We've had 100 years or more of these, whatever you want to call them, Marxist, socialist indoctrination and infiltration into the United States government, into all of the governments of Europe. And that setup is all intended to stop a leader like Donald Trump, who has miraculously been saved from being shot in the head and has been reelected. The only second time it's ever happened before for a president that's had to leave office and then come back, has been reelected against all, not just the odds, but against every bit of power in the United States government, the media, and the corporate world that could be mustered, and added that to the globalist governments in Europe, in the United Kingdom, and throughout the world. It's unbelievable, but it's real.
And what about getting rid of Russia, Russia's Putin? I mean, obviously, I don't think these globalists like either of these two leaders because they won't come to heel at the World Economic Forum and their agenda. Do you think it's possible they also not only want to get rid of Donald Trump, but get rid of Putin and maybe get a regime change in there and go after some of the vital resources of Russia and their minerals.
Oh, absolutely. Vladimir Putin's been accused of wanting to recreate the USSR, the Soviet Union, but I don't agree with that. I agree with what he has stated, which is he wants to reestablish Russia as the empire that it once was under the czars for over 1,000 years, a builder of nations, a strong religious nation, albeit it's the Russian Orthodox Church. It's still based on Christianity. And of course, the globalists, the atheist globalists that are inward looking, believe God is in them, that they are God, doesn't want a Russia led by, not just led by a Vladimir Putin, because quite honestly, I'm not sure exactly how devoted to Christianity he is, but his mother was, and more importantly, the country that he seeks to reestablish was. And of course, they don't want that. They don't want somebody like Donald Trump, who is a Christian himself and believes in the Christian and Judeo values that the country of the United States was founded on, and continues to want to embed in our laws, in spite of the atheists and Marxists in our own world, inside our government, in our society, that are trying to rid us of our ability to worship as we please and to think as we please and to speak both on behalf of that religion and on behalf of what we think, whether they agree with it or not. All of that is being attempted to be destroyed. Russia is part of that. What better way to do it is to draw the United States and Russia into a war against each other with these two at the head of it. Well, and you mentioned Hungary and Viktor Orban and the election fiasco that's ongoing in Romania. And all of those, they want to rid those countries of men and women like that too, because they're serving along the same ideological lines. I'm not saying we're all of the same ideology. Of course, we're all different. The American Republic is a totally different type of democracy than any other one that exists in the world today. But the others are trying to build their country on the parliamentary democracy system that countries like the United Kingdom have built, and those kinds of things. But they insist on, what do they insist on in Hungary and the gentleman that's been banned from running in Romania? And that is protecting Hungarian and Romanian values and their society from the influx of millions upon millions of illegal aliens coming out of the Middle East and transforming these nations, like what's being attempted in France, in the UK, in Germany, and Sweden, and all of those other countries where you see rape is through the roof. The rape numbers are through the roof. Sexual assault, murdering of women, women being expelled from polite society and not to be seen in public. That's what's happening as those countries are being transformed into Middle Eastern, tyrannical, Islamist nation states, at least an attempt to turn the society into that so that they can then take over the offices, which is really quite well underway in many of those countries, especially the UK.
Yeah, excellent analysis. What do you make of this footage today? I guess the Russians, Putin, is protecting Christians. Leo Holman reported on radio today, because I asked him to check into the validity of this. He said that there's 7,000 to 8,000 Christians and Alawite Muslims, which are really non-Muslims because they don't want to practice jihad and all that. So Shahram Hadian, former Muslim, last night said on my broadcast, they're not, I don't really consider them Muslims. It's kind of like his mom and dad who go on to call themselves Muslims, but they didn't want to live under Sharia. His dad was a pork-eating, beer-drinking Muslim, quote, Muslim, but he wasn't interested in living under Sharia, and got out 6 weeks before the fall of the Shah. And of course, he says these Alawite Muslims, they don't want to be involved in jihad. There's a lot of the aspects of the Prophet they don't want to follow. One reason why they're being murdered is because they not only aligned with Assad, but they don't want to be involved in jihad. And so they're seen as hypocrites by Muslims. So the hypocrite Muslims and the infidels, Christians and Jews, are all targets, right? So here you have the Christians, the infidels, and you have the Alawites, the apostate Muslims, being murdered. And we hear that there's 7,000 or 8,000 of them now headed to this base still controlled in Syria by Russia, with more on the way. Isn't that interesting? Where are all the Jew haters today, Colonel? Here we have Russia defending these Christians, and now you have Syria being struck in key places by IDF to protect these Christians. So where are the so-called Christians in America who call themselves Christians that are Jew haters when you've got Putin helping the Christians and the Alawats, and you've got the IDF, the Jewish Prime Minister of Israel, helping these Christians? Interesting how many of the anti-Semites that call themselves Christians on social media don't have much to say today.
Oh, it's because reality rose up and smote them in the face, by golly. And I call it the hand of God. You know, you can only live so long on propaganda narrative. It's kind of like the war in Ukraine. You know, at some point, reality stands up and hits you. That's what just happened to the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, and that's why he's agreed to a 30-day ceasefire if the Russians are still willing to do it. That's where they're at. They're hiding. They're hiding their faces in shame because they knew they were wrong in the first place. And you know who else ought to be hiding their faces in shame? Every media person, every congressperson that dared to call Tulsi Gabbard a Putin puppet because she said as recently in her testimony for her confirmation, and she was right on, that, you know, there's no love lost for the Assad regime, but he did protect minorities, especially the Christian and Alawite communities in the country of Syria. That's one of the reasons why the country was at civil war, and the Islamists were fighting Assad's regime because they want an Islamist state and a chance to restart the caliphate. The Turks are supporting that side of it because they have a stated goal. Erdogan does. He's turned what used to be a secular European state that was allowed into NATO as an ally into a theocracy. And the theocracy isn't based on Christianity. I mean, my gosh, they've turned the world's oldest church, the Sophia Hagia, into a mosque, for goodness sake. And he has a stated goal to reestablish the Ottoman Caliphate and retaking Syria with this group called HTS, led by this al-Jilani guy, who is an al-Qaeda person. Let's make no bones about it. He is an al-Qaeda leader. Think about that. We've allowed and funded and supported an al-Qaeda leader to become the leader of Syria, the same group that killed over 3,000 Americans on 9/11. That is particularly deplorable for you people that supported that, and that's Republicans and Democrats, by the way. So, yeah, they're hiding their heads in shame, and they all should, because Gabbard was right. That's why she visited the Assad government. That's why she said what she said. That's why she has visited Russia. It has nothing to do with that. And you know what? President Trump agrees with Vladimir Putin and is complimenting him on protecting these groups on that airbase. It's an airbase in western Syria that was still occupied by the Russians. They've come to some agreement with the al-Jilani government to allow them to stay there. And my concern, though, is that the bloodlust is up amongst al-Jilani's ground forces. Obviously, if you've seen the videos and watched my show yesterday, showed one of the clip of the videos of them making men crawl in the streets and then shooting them in the head, dead women, dead babies, all kinds of craziness. They're just like the Nazis in Hamas, just like the Nazis in Iran and Hezbollah, and they deserve to be treated exactly like the Nazis of Nazi Germany. And we should adamantly set out to destroy these people. And I know that'll be hard for the egos in the political world in the United States and elsewhere because, they were all in on it. And now you'll see them turn and try to run away from it. But we can't let them do that. We got to keep identifying them and then encourage President Trump's administration to take this fight on and help the Russians, help these people, even if that's necessary. And the Israelis.
Right. Here's what Leo Holman, my producer, senior executive producer, Leo Holman for Worldview Report. Look, he found this article from 2008. 2008, he found this today. Bush, U.S. supports Ukraine's bid to join NATO. President Bush said Tuesday he will work as hard as I can to help Ukraine join NATO and declared that Russia will not be able to veto former Soviet states joining the transatlantic military alliance. This just shows us this push has been going on quite some time.
That was the first strategic error the government of the United States made, was when President Bush, George W. Bush, was convinced that it was okay to go along with this very tragic mistake. It's led to millions dead now. It's led to a split in the alliance. It's led to a split with our allies, and quite honestly, this over focus on something that is not a vital national interest to the United States has led to us taking our eye off the ball, like places like the countries I just named that are being turned into Islamic, fascist, tyrannical countries like Germany, France, and the UK, and Sweden, for goodness sake. It's incredible because that's happening because we took our eye off the ball and we didn't continuously diplomatically engage in those countries to help them make the right decisions on this course, or force them to, using the tools of diplomacy and economic security. And we failed in that regard, in my opinion.
Let's look at this headline. China raises military budget as Trump nominee warns of catastrophic war. China will raise defense spending by 7.2% for a third consecutive year, the country said Wednesday, as it continues a military buildup that a Trump Pentagon nominee has warned is geared toward a war with the United States. What are your thoughts on this, Colonel?
Yeah, they're talking about Elbridge Colby, who is due to be confirmed for Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the number 3 position in the Pentagon. I've interviewed him several times on my show. I am aligned with him on his view of peace through strength and President Trump's strategy. Elbridge wrote the national security strategy for the first Trump administration as a Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy and Force Development. And that strategy is still in place. They have not, Biden's team did not remove that strategy. So it makes sense for him to be the USD policy. He's a China hawk, as am I, hawkish, I guess. I'm anti-war, and I'm pro being strong enough to deter our enemies from starting a war instead of the situation we're in now, where our enemies have started wars because they think they can get away with it. And China's our adversary. So we've got to take a look at that, and I think that will help reveal that some of these stories about the weakness of China economically, which are probably somewhere in the middle of truth, but this effort will actually help him economically by doing an additional military buildup and help strengthen him internally, and it's a smart move on his part because he sees no other place to go. The tricky part for us is, can we invest enough in our force to ensure that we could win a war with China if they choose to start one with us? That's the only thing that will deter the communist Chinese from doing things like trying to take Taiwan by violence.
How concerned are you about China in Canada, China in Mexico? We know the red-green axis, the red being the Marxist, the green being the Islamist. We have, in one of my documentaries a few years ago, an expert warning that Canada could be like an aircraft carrier where the Islamists use Canada to launch what he called kamikaze attacks on America. How concerned are you with Chinese practicing up there in Canada? And of course, we know there's big trading partnership there between Canada and China, as well as China and Mexico. And then, of course, you add in the drug cartels, which get their precursor chemicals for their fentanyl from the Chinese. I guess I'm concerned that maybe China has some beachheads to our north and south. What are your concerns?
Well, they certainly have the capability to have those beachheads, and they have better relationships in Canada, and they have obviously the cartel relationships, which feeds into the government too of Mexico. Let's be realistic about that. So,
exactly.
Their moves in this hemisphere with the Belt and Road Initiative. And that's what President Trump's administration is pushing back on when they talk about retaking the Panama Canal having a major corporation buy the ports at the east and west end of the Panama Canal, because China actually owns those right now, the Chinese companies. And believe me, every Chinese company is part of the Communist Party government. So don't be fooled by that word company either. So we're pushing back on that. That's the reason we're pushing back on that. We're pushing back in other countries in this hemisphere to reestablish a policy more akin to the Monroe Doctrine, which basically essentially said that, hey, we won't mess with your part of the world, and if you come in and mess with our half of the world, we're going to thump you. And that's where I think the president's heading, and we should be, not so that we can fight wars all the time, but so we don't have to. Let's be clear. Let's provide clarity to our adversaries through our voice and our actions. And that's what Colby is all about, too, especially with China, because China is the adversary that could cause our country to not exist anymore, just based on what they've done with Belt and Road, what they continue to do with building up their forces. They vastly increased their intercontinental ballistic missile, nuclear missile capability. They have that nuclear capable hypersonic missile that we can't even detect reliably. We have no defense against it that can carry a nuclear warhead. And as we all know, and Dr. Pry used to talk about all the time, their first step is to take out our eyes and ears through an EMP attack. And that weapon system is very capable of that. They're building their third aircraft carrier. We only have 11, and we've used the heck out of what we do have, and our cycles for maintenance and downtime and those kind of things is way out of whack because we've made poor decisions to get involved in these wars when we didn't really need to be. So we have that challenge going for us. They're building the first ever totally dedicated drone aircraft carrier that they could park anywhere. And of course, in Canada, Canada is so weak militarily that they have airfields all over the country up there. It's a vast country that could be landed on and taken control of very easily. I recall the Crimea operation where Putin put unmarked special forces, landed them in cargo aircraft on the airfields in Crimea at the beginning of that operation. You think the Chinese weren't watching that and didn't notice that? Heck, we did that in Afghanistan. We dropped paratroopers and helicopters into an airfield at the middle of the night. Was our very first move when we started the kinetic operation of that. So it's a very real risk and a danger. And we need to insist that Canada actually increase its defense spend.
Mm-hmm. Okay, final question. My concern before the election was that China would do something with Taiwan and become a distraction there. Then you got China fooling around with the Philippines. You got North Korea fooling around with South Korea. You've got the war going on with Ukraine and Russia. You've got Iran fooling around with Israel. How concerned are you that some of these leaders get together and decide to do bad things all at once to really throw off America and really create a real serious problem for President Trump and our country?
Every American should be very concerned about that. The BRICS organization exists, and many of the countries that you're concerned about are members of BRICS now or have requested membership of that. That's why you've seen President Trump come out very strongly in opposition to the BRICS organization, which is, a very veiled attempt to take down the American dollar as the world's reserve currency. They're going after what's called the petrodollar, euphemistically. And that's why he is attacking it, pretty aggressive and rigorous opposition, so that we're putting them on notice. But they are talking. Let's face reality. The Russians were forced back into closer contact into the arms of the Chinese communists because of our and NATO's decision to take the actions we have over the Ukraine issue. The Russians felt like they were forced to actually invade Ukraine in February of 2022 because of the years especially since 2014, when the Ukrainian government was essentially overthrown by us in a color revolution in favor of a pro-Western set of leadership, and our insistence, what you led off with that clip that Bush too had agreed that NATO should, and publicly said NATO should be accepting Ukraine and inviting them into the fold as a member of the alliance. That is a red line. for the Russians. So they felt forced to do that. I'm not saying it's okay that they invaded. They're the aggressor here. But you got to recognize the reality of the situation. And that reality is that they're closer with China now. They have a defense agreement. They have an overland delivery of oil for material and supplies agreement that can't be intercepted at sea. They are doing joint simulated combat flight operations, including penetrating American and Canadian airspace to test our defense systems and to practice their joint and interoperable procedures that they've never done before. They're doing joint at sea maneuvers. They're about to, China and Iran and Russia are about to, among others, are about to come together for a large naval operation in the northern Indian Ocean. And so it's a very big concern. And they are getting together. They're probably doing it through some type of electronic means at this point for the most part. But we should be watching for them to have a physical conference and to invite others like the North Koreans. Obviously, the North Koreans have spilt their own blood trying to help defend the Kursk region from the Ukrainians.
Colonel Rob Maness, robmaness.com is his website, robmaness.com, and he's each and every day at 2 p.m. Central, 3 Eastern, right here on worldviewtube.com. Colonel, as always, thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Brandon.
Colonel Rob Maness checking in. Check out his site, robmaness.com. Hey, folks, don't forget we're coming to Milwaukee April 15th. That's a Tuesday night. It's a free event. We haven't done a Worldview Weekend rally in 7 years. Dr. Andy Woods, myself, and Aaron Lavarco there on Tuesday night, April 15th, 6:30 to 9:30. It's free, but you must register at worldviewtube.com/events. You must register everyone attending. So go in and register one person, come back out, go back in with the same email, that's fine, and load the name of the next person. So we have a chair for everyone. That's the thing. We have over 800 now registered, folks. Get registered, worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. All right. And then also, why don't you go over to worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. We have a ton of these business cards going out, folks. You can order the free business cards, 20 of them. Thousands of these have gone out now, folks. Free business cards, a pack of 20, free. Pass them out to your family and friends. Keep them on you. You think you've met somebody that might enjoy the free programming at Worldview Tube? Pull out a card and give it to them. We need your help promoting the network, folks. We're putting out a lot of great truth. And at the end of the day, this is a battle for hearts and minds, is it not? So we need more people listening. We have a lot of people that say to us, wish I'd found out about you guys years ago. So people might actually thank you. And what can you lose? They don't want to listen? Fine. They watch it and they don't like it. They don't have to watch anymore. But a lot of folks, I think, will appreciate the truth and the common sense here. Also, you can find out about our national conference coming up on Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, right here in the Mid-South, Collierville. We've even dropped the price down to $99. That's quite a reduction in price from last year because we were able to save a lot of money bringing it here. So please consider registering now. Gordon Chang, Sidney Powell, Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen, lead pollster Chris Martinson, Dr. Lana, Alex Newman. Going to be a great lineup. Our national conference right there. Worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Joining me now is Alex Newman. Something maybe we thought would never happen, and that is the Department of Education employees being told you're not to report to the office. Are they really going to shut down the Department of Education or not? I don't know the answer fully, but I know someone that does. Alex Newman, he joins us now. Alex, welcome to the broadcast again. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here, Brandon. Thank you for having me.
Alex, there's this notice that went out. Department of Education officials received an email telling them to vacate the building by 6 p.m. What is this all about?
Well, we'll have to see. A lot of them are being told they can work remote, and everybody's preparing for this big executive order from Donald Trump. But the reality is, as Mark Twain once famously said, the reports of death have been greatly exaggerated. For the Department of Education to truly be shut down, it would require quite a few federal laws being repealed. It would require quite a bit that we haven't seen any appetite for yet on Capitol Hill. So, I hope that's the direction that we're moving in, and I think Trump is going to try to use his executive authority as best he can to wind down this department. But the reality is there is a long way to go, and we shouldn't be popping the champagne just yet.
Okay, so was there anything in Linda McMahon's hearings that lead you to believe that the Department of Education as we know it may go the way of the dodo bird, but the bureaucracy itself would be absorbed by other agencies?
Well, it looks like that's the plan right now, Brandon. And if you look at Project 2025, there was a lot of different proposals in Project 2025. Obviously, not all of them are going to be carried out, and even Trump himself denounced it as something he didn't know about. But if you look at Project 25, if you look at what Linda McMahon, the new Secretary of Education, said during her Senate confirmation hearings, it's very clear that we're not talking about getting the federal government out of education, at least not yet. What they are talking about is, yes, shuttering down the building for the U.S. Department of Education, maybe firing some of the staff, but these functions would remain. And that's what Linda McMahon told the senators who were asking her questions. So, that one we're going to transfer to the Department of Health and Human Services. That function we're going to transfer over to the Department of State or Justice or the Interior or Labor. So the plan they have right now is to wind down the bureaucracy, yes, but really we're not shutting down those functions. We're just moving them to other bureaucracies as of right now. And actually, if you look at the legislation that's been introduced in Congress, Thomas Massie has a bill that would actually shut it down. But the big legislation that's being pushed by the fake media is the one by Senator Mike Rounds, which does exactly what we just described. It redistributes the functions of the U.S. Department of Education to other federal departments.
Okay, so this is not a victory then?
No, I mean, there are certainly small wins here. I mean, we're going to cut off some of the funding streams to the DEI nonsense. Obviously, that's a win. We're going to shut down some of the mandates. They're talking about wherever they have the statutory authority to do so, they want to end the strings attached and just give it as block grants to the states or even to the local governments. So you might call it a baby step in the right direction, but before we get too carried away here and say, yay, the U.S. Department of Education is dead, we're a long, long way from that.
Okay, so what do you make today of the battle between Thomas Massie and Donald Trump? What do you make of that?
That's a tough one. I know Thomas Massie. I like Thomas Massie. I respect him greatly. He's got one of the strongest voting records in Congress, and he's very independent. He's not one to get bullied around. And frankly, if you listen to his reasons for opposing this bill, they're absolutely positively correct. The Democrats are opposing it for entirely different reasons. So I think it's important that people understand that nuance. Thomas Massie is not saying that we need to fund more of these programs. Thomas Massie is saying this bill is a massive atrocity filled with unconstitutional spending. And he's absolutely right. Now, strategically, is this the wisest way to approach it? That I don't know. That's something for the politicians to figure out. But the idea that Trump is going to be able to unseat Thomas Massie, he's tried before, was unfortunately for his optics, very unsuccessful. In fact, there's been 3 challengers in the primary to him that, as Thomas Massie pointed out, tried to be more MAGA than him, and every single one of them lost. I think the best challenger got like 25%. So his constituents really like him. He's very much like Congressman Ron Paul. He votes no on anything that's not entirely constitutional, and his constituents love him for that. And so Thomas Massie's pretty secure in his district. I don't think Donald Trump's going to succeed in ousting him. He tried it before and failed, so we'll see. But I think there can be a compromise here where the other Republicans say, hey, Thomas, you're actually kind of right. There's a lot of unconstitutional stuff in this bill, but let's work together as we work to move in the right direction, and then we can quibble over the details once we're moving solidly in the right direction, at least.
Okay, now let's go to another one. Here's an article at libertysentinel.org, your website, revealed 60 to 70% of sex trafficking victims from child welfare system. Now, this is very interesting because last week or 10 days ago, I had on Garland Favorito. Garland and I were both friends with State Senator Linda Schaefer. She spoke for the Worldview Weekend in Atlanta, Georgia, in person. Her husband was there. We all went out to lunch. And of course, you know, she was on my radio show several times. She spoke for Phyllis Schlafly. She was supposed to be dropping a book and a documentary on children being sex trafficked through the foster program and whatnot in Georgia. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Of course I do, yeah. And she died in a murder-suicide that anybody with two brain cells to rub together knows did not actually happen the way we were told it happened. But yeah, she was on the front lines of exposing the sex trafficking. To just put it very bluntly, the government was kidnapping children from families. And she said they actually had a preference for good families. They would target the best of families and rip them apart, steal their children, and then put them into sex trafficking. And she said this is not just isolated to Georgia. This is a nationwide problem. She saw the tip of the iceberg, and she paid with her life for trying to expose it. And of course, the data is overwhelming. Right, the vast majority of the kids who are being trafficked right now for sexual purposes are coming out of the child welfare system. And Nancy Schaefer could have told us that well over a decade ago.
And so, tell me about this latest report, then.
So it's interesting. It's a study by a law office, and they actually sent it to me. And I think people need to look at what the data shows here. The overwhelming majority of the kids that are being rescued out of sex trafficking ended up there as a direct result of the Child Protection Services, the Child Welfare Agency. They have different names in different states. And of course, the federal government has been incentivizing this for decades, where they give local governments a bonus. The more children they steal, the more children they place in adoption. Recently, with the wide open border, we had the same thing. Whistleblowers coming out of HHS saying that the Biden administration was deliberately putting children with known sex traffickers, with known pimps who are pretending to be uncles and other family members. So we have a really serious problem, Brandon, a problem where the government is literally involved in the sex trafficking of children. So we all heard about Epstein, again, tip of the iceberg, but this is much, much worse than people can imagine.
You know, I was so thankful when my kids turned 18 because of the fact that I know so much about CPS and how it all works. Now, again, my wife has a degree as a social worker. She was a medical social worker, but she has a degree in social work. She saw firsthand, she'd come home from the hospital and tell me how a minority family would come in with a child, you know, who has whatever issues, and no one really wanted to question anything, right? But let a white middle-class family come in, mom and dad with another child or two, and the baby had fallen out of the high chair or something very innocent, and they get the third degree. But the lady that's had her third child, fourth child with the fourth man doing drugs in the hospital room, you know, people make a gazillion excuses for them. Yeah. You know, they're victims. My wife saw it firsthand. She's like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And she even told me where she would make a case for the family that they're trying to, you know, maybe put a extra scrutiny on. And my wife would say, no, you know, I think everything we're seeing here is legit. You know, if there aren't good people in the system like her at the time, and she only did that about 5 years, because quickly after we had children, she quit, thankfully, because that's what we both wanted her to raise our kids with me. But she saw it firsthand. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I was glad when my kids turned 18, Alex, because the CPS system to me is a very scary thing.
It really is, Brandon. And you're right. There are, thank God, decent people within this system. And I happen to know some of them. And they are more appalled by this stuff than we are, because they see it on a daily basis. You're absolutely right, too, about the kind of families that they target. And Nancy Schaefer talked about this. She said there was a real preference for stealing blonde children because I guess they're easier to adopt. It's easier to get the bonus. Once they take them into the system, they put all these labels on them. They diagnose them with all kinds of fake mental diseases, start drugging them. So the big pharmaceutical companies get a big bonus. The local agency that was involved gets a big bonus. Everybody is making a fortune off of this. And what's so tragic is that the kids who are actually being abused, right? The kids who are actually being sexually trafficked and mistreated in a very serious way, they are not the ones being rescued more often than not. So we have a tremendous problem here, Brandon. I fully understand why you would be very happy once your kids turn 18. This is a real issue, and there are a lot of innocent families that have been targeted. Again, and this isn't to demonize everybody that works in the system. There are good, honest, reasonable people who work in the system, but there are also crazy feminists who despise the nuclear family. There are anti-Christian bigots who deliberately go after Christians. There are people who basically are in the pockets of the big pharmaceutical lobby who target families that choose not to vaccinate or choose not to follow the entire schedule. And then there are the sex perverts. And this is obvious, right? Wherever there are children who are easily accessible, who are vulnerable, that's where the predators will gravitate towards. So we shouldn't be surprised to find these kinds of people within the system. It would be surprising rather not to find them in the system. But what we need is a full revamping of this system, massive reforms, probably rip it up from the roots and start over, because we have gone way off the rails when it comes to child protection in this country.
Look at this headline, and this is a New York Post. I shared this on the air live today on the radio with Leo, and Leo Holman was hearing it for the first time. He was like, what? Leo had a verbal reaction to this. Drugs taken by millions in U.S. can cause deviant sexual behavior, including pedophilia. But patients aren't warned by doctors. March 11th article, New York Post. A class of drugs commonly used to treat movement disorders like Parkinson's disease and restless leg syndrome is pushing people into risky sexual behavior. Patients taking dopamine agnostics say the drugs have triggered uncontrollable impulses, including flashing, sex addiction, and even pedophilia, leaving them struggling with feelings of shame and confusion. Coming from a BBC reviewed study. We know a lot of these psychotropic drugs are bad news, right? What do you make of this latest? Have you heard this?
I had not heard that, Brandon, but frankly, I'm not surprised. If you look at the side effects on these drugs that are marketed as cures or treatments for alleged mental health issues, the side effects alone should be more than enough to scare people off. You look at depression medications, the side effects include suicidal and homicidal ideation. Are you kidding me? You're going to give someone who's depressed a pill that might cause them to commit suicide or worse, massacre innocent people? I mean, this is totally crazy. And I actually believe, Brandon, that Big Pharma is so corrupt that this goes beyond just making money. Everybody assumes that it's just driven by greed, and I think there is a big element of that. But I actually think it's even worse than that. I think they know the devastating effects that these substances have on the minds of people and on the lives of people, and they like it. Right. I was talking to Dr. Peter Breggin, a Harvard-trained legendary psychiatrist. He went to war with his own industry. They were lobotomizing people and telling them this was a treatment. They were doing electroshock torture on people and calling it therapy. And he says what you're dealing with here are neurotoxic chemicals masquerading as drugs. And there's an evil agenda. And what he said, this was just a few days ago, just really stuck with me. He said psychiatry is at the cutting edge of tyranny because it's reducing our resistance to tyranny. It's making us docile. It's poisoning our brains. And you see that so clearly when you look at these people that get hooked on these psychiatric drugs. They can't think straight. They don't have the ability anymore to resist the evil that's all around them. In some cases, they even want to jump on board. And so I think that a lot more is known than the big pharmaceutical companies would like us to understand.
Indeed. All right, let's go to this one real quick. Trudeau replacement, a globalist pushing CO2 tax. Trudeau replacement, a globalist pushing the CO2 tax, People's Party leader. Tell me about the new leader, Mr. Carney, there in Canada.
Well, I've had my eyes on Mr. Carney for a long time. He's a central banker, and they only let very, very loyal puppets lead their central banks. Stop it. If you're going to be the head of the Bank of England, if you're going to be the head of the Bank of Canada, the Central Bank of Canada, it means you are tried, you are true, you're a very loyal puppet. And just as a backup, they almost certainly have dirt on you. Maybe you went to Epstein's Island, who knows? That's Mark Carney in a nutshell, right? Davos crowd loves him. The Bilderbergers love him. He is a total puppet of the left-wing globalist totalitarian swamp. But I really enjoyed my conversation with Maxime Bernier. He was the foreign minister of Canada. He was in the Conservative Party. He lost to the leadership race for the Conservative Party by less than 1% in very, very suspicious circumstances. And I think the reason why is this is a guy who's kind of like Donald Trump. He's not part of the system. He's not part of the establishment. He wants to do things different. He wants to put Canada first. So it was a real joy to be able to speak with him. He's a French Canadian, but he's probably going to do really well in this upcoming election. It looks like the liberals are in big trouble. The conservatives, unfortunately, it's kind of like our rhinos and Democrats. There's not a whole lot of difference between them. And so Maxime Bernier is really offering people a different vision. And I hope that people in Canada or people who have connections to Canada will take a look at this. It's really, really significant. And Canadians have an opportunity to make their voices heard in a way that really could be significant. I mean, if the People's Party gets enough of the vote, they could become kingmakers in Parliament, and that would just be a great day. So
it's all there at libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. No shortage of things to write or talk about, is there, Alex?
Absolutely true. Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And we carry his broadcast on the weekends, folks, at worldviewtube.com. And, of course, you can pick it up at libertysentinel.org. And he'll be a keynote speaker at this fall's Worldview Weekend, our 22nd annual national conference on Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. There's only seating for 350. The rest of you will have to watch through the vault. You can get your tickets now at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. But, hey, if you're a vault member, you can stay at home and watch from the comfort of your couch in your sweatpants. Worldviewtube.com/vault. You know, interesting story about that I saw today. And I put it up at worldviewreport.com, by the way. New study. Let's see if I can find it. It's something about, let me see. I do the old Control F, home. There it is. America is becoming a nation of homebodies. Apparently, there's a new study out in February 2025, cover story, the Atlantic Journal. Journalist Derek Thompson dubbed our current era as the antisocial century. He isn't wrong. According to our recent research, the U.S. becoming a nation of homebodies. Using data from the American Time Use Survey, we studied how people in the U.S. spent their time before and during after the pandemic. Well, it turns out they like to stay at home. The trend of staying home is not new. There was a steady decline in out-of-home activities in the last 2 decades leading up to the pandemic. Well, there you go. Look at that. Time spent out of the house, been falling since 2003. Well, yeah. And the sad thing is when I go out most of the time, I'm like, why did I go out? People wearing their pajamas in the restaurant. You go to the grocery store. You can't believe what you're seeing. People dressed as cats. Literally one night, Logan was with me. My wife was with me. We're in a store. Around the corner comes a young gal dressed as a cat. And that's when you're not running into just the weirdest people that you don't even know what gender are they and the hygiene. Ooh. Logan went out to eat the other day at one of his restaurants. He said the waitress's body odor was so strong he about vomited. I'm like, yeah, I know. This is why I don't go out much anymore. No wonder people are staying at home, right? Now, I'll tell you, if you come to a Worldview Weekend, though, that's not what you're going to find. You're going to find top drawer people, top shelf people. And if you do come to the conference, we got some nice hotels right there at worldviewstore.com where you can get your tickets, great restaurants. But you got to pick carefully or you may actually find someone that you don't want to be around. But that was a restaurant in Memphis, not in Collierville, right, Logan? That's right. That's right. So anyway, I do understand why people are becoming more and more homebodies. Even Mr. Logan's a young guy. You're kind of a homebody, aren't you, Logan? Yeah, he is. For a lot of the same reasons I am, right? You just don't want to go out there and deal with a lot of these people. Anyway, Americans are becoming homebodies. So maybe you want to stay at home and watch the conference in October. You can do that, worldviewtube.com/vault. You can also watch our April conference. You can watch as a Vault member of that one. We'll live stream that baby, and you can watch and stay at home again for that one. But if you want to come to the one in April, you can do that. You want to come to the one in October, you can do that. But the seating is limited for October. Only 350 seats, all right? Worldviewstore.com. All right, that's our broadcast for tonight. Dolly, you want to come up and say goodnight to everybody? Come on up. Let that music roll. Let's call it a night. Come on up. Come on up and say goodnight to everybody. Come on. Come up and say goodnight. Don't be so shy. What's that all about? We hope you appreciate the broadcast we bring you and all the programs we bring you each and every day. Right, Dolly? And if you do appreciate us, go to worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. There it is right there. Roll through our sponsors. We have a lot of great sponsors, folks. Check out all our sponsors. We believe in all these products. Please support us. Please, please, please. We need your support, folks. Very important that we have your support. So thank you for doing that. Right, Dolly? All right. Tell your family and friends about us. And again, Don't forget about the fact that we're here each and every day, and we're on a lot of platforms. We're on Roku, we're on Amazon Fire, we're on, what else, Logan? All kinds of new platforms. What's the new? Spotify, what? Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio. Wow. Lots of podcasts going on up there. All right. Take care, America. May God save America. Take care.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome to the broadcast. Glad you are with us on this March 11th, 2025. We're going to be joined by our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron, to give us an update. Then we're going to go to Leo Holman. Canada has a new prime minister. And we thought Trudeau was bad. Apparently this Carney character is just as bad, if not worse. And now President Trump, of course, is upping, I guess, the tariffs or threatening to up the tariffs on Canada. And the new prime minister has come out and said, don't want to do it, but if you do, we're going to turn the power off on 1.5 million Americans. We buy a lot